Okay, so we've just heard from the six products that fall under the category A, ergogenic aids category. We're now going to have a quick chat about category B supplements. So category B supplements are supplements where there's limited evidence, but potentially a mechanism as to where these products could benefit exercise performance. So they're defined as being under the need for further research, and they could be considered for the provision to athletes, but we encourage the use of a protocol or case management where we can monitor the situation and actually develop that evidence. So they're legal, you can use them. There may be a mechanism by which they work or a plausible sort of reason for taking it, but we can't convincingly, based on what we know, suggest that this product is actually should be recommended in certain sporting contexts. So the products that fall under this category are foods that contain polyphenols, so cherries, tart cherries, berries, black currants, and quercetin. Other products include things like collagen support products, carnitine, HMB. This is where the ketone supplements currently sit. Even though we're having an explosion of knowledge in that area, it's still sort of very difficult to recommend these products. Fish oils, phosphate, and curcumin all fit under this category. If for those people who are unwell, zinc lozenges and vitamin C fit under this category. In terms of amino acids, branched chain amino acids and leucine and tyrosine fall under this category, and antioxidants, vitamin C, E, and acetylcysteine fall under this category as well. So these products, as I said, there is maybe some evidence that shows that it may work. There's usually a plausible reason for doing it, but we don't know enough about these products at the moment to make a recommendation on them. Category D supplements are supplements that are banned or at high risk of contamination. Okay, so these are definite no-go supplements. And so these are supplements that fall under a variety of categories: stimulants, prohormones, growth hormone releases or peptides, beta-2 agonists, what we call SARMs or selective androgen receptor modulators, metabolic modulators, and other. So things like ephedrine, strychnine, DMAA, DMBA, DHEA, things like macaroot powder, and we have a number of other products that fall under the SARMs category. Ligandrol, things like colostrum are also in this category. So colostrum is the solution that's produced by mammals just after giving birth or calving, if you're a cow, or another animal that has a calf as a mammal. So it's usually the very high immunoglobulin whole protein solution that a mother produces to kickstart the immune function of its young is also in this category. So these products should be on a list of supplements. For instance, if you work with an AFL club or you work with a soccer club, these are the products that you definitely don't want your athletes to be consuming at this point. And category C is basically a category where there's no scientific evidence. It's not supportive or it's beneficial. Sorry, there is scientific evidence, rather, but the scientific evidence suggests that it doesn't work or it's not of benefit, or that there's no research that's been undertaken. They're not banned, but we really there's probably not a plausible mechanism, and there's no real reason to be taking them. And so they used to have a long list of these products on category C, but it's been changed in the last sort of 5 or so years, so that it's basically anything that doesn't go into A, B, or D. And the reason that they changed it, one, was that the list was very, very long, and two, they didn't see that they wanted to be promoting a whole range of products that people had either not heard of before or didn't have any evidence behind them. So it was just easier to say that if it's not in A, it's not in B, it's not in D, then it falls into category C. Okay, I think the important thing, and the thing that I've always liked about the sports supplement framework, is that it gets reviewed on a regular basis. And that's really important because our opinion of products needs to change and needs to shift as the evidence develops. Science isn't fixed. Here's a good example, your mobile phone. Most of you probably have never seen a mobile phone that looks like the one on the right-hand side here. This was the first mobile phone I ever saw. My dad had one. It was probably about 15 kilos, right up until relatively sort of modern versions. An example, and I showed you one earlier in the trimester of the ketones work that's been done most recently. Here's a very good example of nitrates. This is nitrates and time to exhaustion time trials. This is a review that was done in 2013 by an Australian author. And you can see at the time in 2013, there were only 3 studies that we were able to determine what was the effect of time to exhaustion in trials using nitrates and beetroot juice. So that was 2013. Now, one of my PhD students, Nick McMahon, redid a systematic review, exactly the same criteria that was described in the Hoon paper, but just 4 years later. And you can see here that there's a whole new body of work that's been undertaken. Again, you can see here that the overall effect is still in favour of nitrates. It was in 2013, and again, favours nitrates in 2017. But we can be far more confident that that's a true effect based on just the number of studies that have been done and the number of studies that show negative effects, almost none. Some of them show neutral effects. Many of them are pointing sort of broadly into the positive realm here. So I think it is very important to recognise that from one year to the next, if you happen to be on a supplement that is popular, it can be very popular in terms of science as well as via consumption. So you need to sort of stay with your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the supplement industry. The other thing that has occurred is that people take more than one supplement, and so whilst we might design a study in the laboratory that's very tight, it's around maybe the pre-exercise, pre-nutrition, pre-sleep is all tightly regulated, and we take one supplement, and maybe we give you 2 doses of it, or and we test the supplement beforehand to make sure how much product's active in that supplement. The reality is that athletes may be taking multiple supplements under a whole range of different conditions, where they're well or not well prepared for training or competition, and then they use that as their basis of whether they're continuing or not. There have been some studies that have looked at multi-supplement use. There's a couple of different approaches that you can try. From a science perspective, from an evidence perspective, it would be suggested that you did it in a considered way where you add one supplement that's likely to complement another supplement. And so I'll give you some examples of those in a moment, or an example of studies that have been done in this area, as opposed to supplements where you might look at something like a pre-workout supplement, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential ergogenic compounds. And those ergogenic compounds are all sort of mixed in together, and it's very actually difficult, number one, to see whether performance is being affected, but then second of all, to work out, well, which one of these changes is actually causing the performance change. So it's basically you're throwing everything into the mix, and then at the end of that, you're not able to actually see whether it works or not. And if it doesn't work or it does work, you can't tell why it does or it doesn't work. So I guess from a science perspective, it is important to be a little bit more considered and look to use supplements and not necessarily have one supplement only, but it may be like a multi-supplement strategy. So one example of that might be bicarbonate bicarbonate, yes, and beta-alanine. And the reason that you might combine those two supplements is because they're both working for similar outcomes, which is increasing buffering capacity, but one works, as I said, external to the muscle, and the other one works internal to the muscle. So if you combine them, they're working on the same mechanism to try and improve tolerance to repeated sort of sprintability type sports. It is possible that the two things might work synergistically. So there have now been 7 studies done in this area, and most of them show a 2 to 3% improvement from bicarbonate, but there's no combined benefit from the trials where they give the combination of beta-alanine and bicarbonate. Now, the studies that have been done in this space are really interesting because remember, bicarbonate you need to load up immediately just before the exercise, whereas the beta-alanine you need weeks and weeks and weeks of loading to have that become effective. So this 2 to 3% improvement from bicarbonate is sort of similar amount to what we get from just bicarbonate by itself. So in these studies, they usually give either an arm of the study that's just one of the supplements. So they have trials where they've just got this one or just got this one, and then there's others where they've got a combination of the two. And sometimes because of the loading phase of beta-alanine, they need to run this as different groups because expecting a washout or people to cross over from a pre-dose of beta-alanine is a much bigger problem. Or alternatively, as some of the studies have done, give beta-alanine and then give, on occasions, acute doses of bicarbonate to see if there's a combined effect or not. So, but what we've typically seen is that the improvements in these studies are similar to the effect of the bicarbonate by itself, and that you don't get an additional benefit from combining the supplements. And when we look at other supplement combinations, we see fairly similar responses to this. That if you get 2% or 3% improvement from caffeine, and then you are also giving the person an opportunity to consume creatine at the same time, you don't get the 2 or 1% from creatine on top of the benefit from the caffeine. It's not as if we're getting it 2 from here, 3% from here, 1% from there, and then all of a sudden you're taking 6 supplements and you're breaking world records. That's not typically what's been demonstrated. What I would like to highlight is this really nice study, which gives us some understanding of this. This was a study published just a couple of years ago, which explores what's regarded as the performance reserve. So to what extent can you improve an individual's performance in a one-off situation? And the thing that I liked about this study, it's within subject design, so that the individuals cycled on 4 occasions. The first 2 occasions, they ride their own bike on a time trial. This is a 4,000 metre cycling time trial performance, and that is then used to determine their usual performance, their average performance. Now, in this study, when they got to trials 3 and 4, they said these are the performance rides. So they're all performance rides, but on this one, what we're going to give you is you'll be riding. We'll show you how you've performed in the other rides. Okay, so we will give you an avatar of yourself, and we want you to try and hold on to that pace or beat it if you can, but that will just give you a marker as to show you how you've gone in these previous rides. And what they did with the avatar was that they actually, on the 2 different occasions, gave the avatar more speed than they were able to demonstrate in the familiarisation and baseline ride. So it was 2% more than the baseline ride on one occasion, and then on the next occasion, or on a randomised approach, the other one was actually 5% faster. So these people were riding with a computer image of themselves that they were told was the same performance that they'd done previously, but in fact it was a better performance by 2 different margins, either the 2% or the 5%. And so what did they show, which was quite fascinating, is that the time to completion, so this is the baseline ride, 360 seconds, most people actually rode faster when their avatar was 2% faster than they were on that baseline ride. So they were actually able to hold on to their avatar and stay reasonably close to them and finish, at a time that was, typically 3 to 4 seconds faster than during their baseline ride. Unfortunately, when it got to 5%, some individuals continued to improve, but most, in terms of their performance, started to vary to a larger extent, and we see that their performance wasn't as, it sort of returned to baseline. So the authors concluded that there were some individuals in this group who just felt demoralised by the fact that they couldn't keep up with their avatar at 5%, and it was sort of beyond what they considered to be their performance reserve. So the individuals then would only push themselves so far, and their performance started to move in the other direction. So I think this, this 2 to 3% performance improvement, that's what we see with a lot of supplements, and maybe it's an element of belief as well as expectation, as well as, yes, there is a reserve there that we can sort of tap into. But taking more and more supplements is not necessarily tapping into more and more of that performance reserve. It tends to be there tends to be a ceiling there. The final thing I want to leave you with is to use or not to use. So a decision-making protocol. So if somebody says to you, I'm thinking about taking this supplement, how do you go about rationalising that? I've broken this decision-making protocol down into slightly bigger text here so you can see. So really just follow these black boxes here. The first one is the athlete ready for supplement use? And you use things like their age, their maturation, their experience, other relevant training variables, other performance goals, all being considered. And if the answer is they're not, then you don't use a supplement or it's not known. Should I use a supplement? Following questions should be used to weigh in the evidence. If they're considering using a supplement, what's the level of evidence of that supplement? Is it anecdotal? Is it conventional wisdom? Are there scientific articles? Is there a meta-analysis? Is there established scientific track record for that supplement? If the answer is no, then don't use a supplement. If the answer is yes, follow down. The next question to ask, is it safe? Look for evidence on adverse reactions, interaction with medication. Do we know what the dose is? If the answer is no, we don't know, then don't use, it's too risky. If the answer is yes, we know these things, then the next question to ask is the supplement come from a reliable source? So is it not on, is it on the WADA prohibited substances list? If the answer is no, if it's got from a known manufacturer with good history of practice, if it's tested independently, if the answer to these things is yes, then you might consider continuing to the next box. If the answer is no to any of those, again, don't use it. If you use can you use the supplement on a trial basis? So trial in practice and or a less important competition. If the answer to that is potentially yes, are you getting consistent positive results? So you're not getting any adverse effects, you're not getting any delirious performance results. If the answer to that is yes, then you've gone through a protocol which is considered somewhat a vigilant use of a dietary supplement. Thanks very much.